Hello everyone. So till now we have seen that how different forms of government were made during the time period of French Revolution. So now let's see specifically that what kind of situation women had in during that time period. Okay. So this topic is, did women have a revolution? Uh, in that we will see what kind of situation women were living in during this time period in France, and did they you know could they bring about any changes with their participation. So let's talk about it now. So here we can say that here, see, from the very beginning women were active participants in the events, which brought about many important changes in French society. So it was not that women were not actively participating. They were participating in the events, and these events, because of their participation, they could actually, bring about some important changes also in the French society. And because of this, they actually started hoping that their involvement would pressurize the revolutionary government. See, with the revolutionary government, means with the changing government, women had hope that someone would listen to them, someone would listen to their demand. Okay. And then these new government, introduced measures to improve their lives. So they had this hope. Most of the women of the third estate had to work. So now let's talk about what kind of situation they were living in. So in this paragraph we are talking about that. So basically, what happened was, most of the women of the third estate, they had to work for the living. So they were living for the they were doing work. Also, they used to work so that they could earn some money and they could live properly. So these women worked for living. They worked as seamstresses, laundresses. They sold flowers, fruits, vegetables in at the market. Some women employed as domestic servants also. So these type of work they used to do. Most women did not have access to education or job training. So they didn't have any access to education or job training. See, this was about the third estate, okay? Only daughters of the nobles or wealthier members of the third estate could study at a convent, and then their families arranged a marriage for them. So only daughters of the noble family, or even if the third estate, then only the wealthier members of the third estate, their daughters, or their members of the female members of their family, they could attain the convent and they could study. Then they would get into the arranged marriage system. So working women had to, it's not only that working women would only work, they had to even take care of their families also, like cooking, fetching water, then queue for the bread, then look after the children and all these things. So they used to do all these things apart from the work. In fact, their wages were lower than those of men. So no matter how they work, no matter what kind of work they are doing, but their wages would remain lower than those of men. So these type of situation women were living in during the French in the French society and during that French Revolution time period. Now, see, in order to discuss and voice their interest, women started their own political clubs. See, we have already seen this when we were discussing about the Jacobin clubs and all these clubs, that even women started their own clubs, okay? So even women wanted to discuss their problems, they wanted to raise their voice, they wanted to give their problems a voice, and that's why even they started their own political clubs. So about 60 women's clubs came up in different French cities. The society, and which some of them were famous, like the Society of Revolutionary and Republican Women was the famous. So this club was famous was the most famous of them. Okay, so you need to remember this name. So this is important. Okay, now see, what were the main demands? See, main demands was that women enjoy the same political right as men. In that, in those women's club, they demanded that women enjoy the same political rights. So mainly their interest was political rights, right? Women were disappointed that Constitution of 1791 reduced them to passive citizens. So women didn't like that during the Constitution of 1791 they were considered as the passive citizens. See, initially they were not even allowed to enter the assembly also. But after the revolutionary constitution, after the revolutionary government started taking, started seizing the power, they started concentrating the power in their hand, they made some changes, but still women were not satisfied. Naturally, they were not taking into consideration women's right. Okay, so in fact this constitution of 1791, they reduced the power of the women, like to, and made them passive citizens. So they demanded right to vote. They means who? Women. So women demanded right to vote. They also demanded to be elected to the assembly. So not only they wanted the right to vote, but they also wanted to get elected to the assembly, and not only that, they also wanted to hold the political office. See, they wanted all these things because they felt that only these things would give them voice. Okay, they could only give their problems a voice with when they would be actually in the political system, right? So they felt that this would be in their interest, and their interest would be represented in the new government with this thing only, with them being in the government. Okay, and that's why they demanded the right to vote, they demanded to be elected to the assembly, and they wanted to hold the political office also. So this point is also important, right? So this is also important. Now, see, when this government actually started, when revolutionary government started taking the powers in their hand, so in the earlier years there were some changes, okay, and these changes helped improve the lives of women. So it was not that the women condition was as bad as it was before. So actually these revolutionary governments started introducing some of the changes. They started introducing some of the laws that could even improve the lives of women. But still there were some problems. Okay, so together with the creation of the state schools, so what exactly they did? So now in this paragraph we will see that what kind of changes, what kind of positive changes. See, let's write it down. So in this paragraph we are going to talk about the positive changes. Okay, just a minute. So these were the positive changes. So together with the creation of state schools, schooling was made compulsory for girls. Okay, so schooling was compulsory now. Their fathers could no longer force them into marriage against their will. So now it was not that their father could, force them into the marriage and against their will. Marriages was made into contract, entered freely and registered under civil law. So even marriages, was made into contract, so that, they used to see the will of the girl also. Then divorce was made legal and could be applied for by both women and men. So now they made this law that now even the women can ask for the divorce. just like before men could ask. Okay, so women could now train for jobs, they could become artists or run small businesses. So all these things were there. Okay, so these were some positive changes that we could see. Now, but still women could not see their demand for the political rights coming into the picture. So that we will see in our next session. Let's complete this. So then we will see the next topic. So women's struggle for the equal political rights, it continued. During the reign of terror, the new government issued laws ordering closure of the women's clubs and banning their political activities. So they were not, satisfied because their demand for the equal political rights was not being listened. In fact, during the reign of terror, this new Jacobean government, they actually closed down the women's clubs. Okay, and many prominent women were arrested, and number of them were executed also. So their voting rights and equal wages, their demand for the movement for the voting rights and equal wages continued through the next 200 years in many countries of the world. Just imagine 200 years it took for the to give the equal rights, equal voting rights and equal wages to the women. 200 years, pretty long period. Now the fight for the vote was carried out through an international suffrage movement during the late 19th. So it started actually in the 18th century and it continued till late 19th and even the earlier 20th century, right? The example of the political activities of French women during the revolutionary years was kept alive. So this example of the political activities of French women, it was kept alive as an inspiring memory, so that women understand, women get this take this example. Okay, women of the other countries also consider them as role model. And it was finally in 1946 that women in France won the right to vote. So this is very important, that in 1946 women in France won the right to vote. Okay, so this is about this kind of situation was there of the women during the French Revolution time period, and how they fought for their rights and right for the vote, right, political rights, for the equality, and how it continued till 200 years. It started in 18th century, but it it went on till earlier 20th century. Now let's quickly talk about this this revolutionary women, Olympia de Gouges. So she was one of the most important politically active women in revolutionary France. She protested against the constitution and the declaration of the right of men and citizen, as they excluded women from the basic rights. Okay, so this declaration of the rights of men and citizen, this declaration excluded women. So she protested against it. In fact, in 1791, she wrote a declaration of the rights of women and citizen. So जिस तरह से men and citizen का declaration of right था, उस तरह से she had written declaration of rights of women and citizen. और उन्होंने वो queen को दिया और members of national assembly को भी दिया, so that they act upon it. In 1793, she criticized Jacobean government for forcibly closing down the women's club. जैसे हमने देखा कि Jacobean government ने forcibly बहुत सारे women's club को close down कर दिया था, तो उसने उसके खिलाफ भी आवाज उठाई थी, और फिर नेशनल कन्वेंशन ने, जो कि Jacobean government के दौरान वो नाम था उनके कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन का, तो नेशनल कन्वेंशन की जो गवर्नमेंट थी उन्होंने उसको ट्रीजन के अंडर चार्ज किया, एंड सून आफ्टर दिस शी वाज एक्सिक्यूटेड. So under this charge of treason she was executed. Okay, so this was the situation of the Olympia de Gouges. In our next video we will discuss about the slavery, abolition of the slavery.